Good morning, everyone. Hello, here we are learning the Mamar, the Hasidic discourse by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which was said in 1979, and it was given out, again, reprinted and given out in 1989. And it's talking about the future redemption. We have to realize a little bit what exactly is going on over here. It says one of the things Moshiach is supposed to do is to try to force the whole world to, just one second, force the whole world to do what God wants. And forcing it means also by power of reasoning, by power of reasoning and by power of convincing the whole world to do what is right. So that's what these Maimorim are designed to do. So let's just take an example from bad, because bad is much more prevalent and powerful now in the world than good is, and it's certainly more obvious. Here we have Karl Marx. Karl Marx, he was a Jew, a completely confused Jew, and he wrote a book, an idea, and this idea conquered the whole world. He personally did not go out and advertise to all the people who were convinced by this book, to go to China, to go to all these places. He didn't. He wrote a book, and this book, the ideas in the book, conquered the minds and the hearts of hundreds of millions of people. Hundreds of millions of people, not necessarily for good, and a lot of times necessarily for real, true evil and for death. I think that communism altogether killed like well over 150 million people, directly caused the death of them, and it was a failed systems and etc. But nevertheless, and people are still adhering to it to this very day. So we see that just writing an idea and popularizing it even the most minimal way, it can convince the whole world, and that's exactly what the Rebbe is doing here, but for good. And he's trying to reset the priorities of all mankind to truth. And even if the Rebbe did not send out the shluchim, etc., to the whole world to actually do it physically, that's enough. That's why it says that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, Rabbi Chaim Ben Attar, that he was the Mashiach. And the Rebbe said about all the Rebbes of Chabad that they're all Mashiach. Every generation has to have the Mashiach. It was just one person that his ideas are inspiring enough to bring all mankind, whether it actually does it or not, to actually inspiring enough to bring all of mankind to realize the truth of what God is that person is what's called Chesed Mashiach. It could be Mashiach. But that's the direction of Mashiach. So that's what we're learning here. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, he's the Mashiach of our generation. Doesn't say anywhere, any place, that if the Mashiach is not physically here with us, that he can't be the Mashiach, because we believe that all Jews are going to rise in the dead. Death is only a temporary thing. It's, in a way, an illusionary thing. Man was meant to live forever, and the soul does live forever. And then in the end, the souls will be joined with the bodies again. So therefore, Mashiach doesn't say anything. It says that the Mashiach is murdered because of his sins, actually. like Bar Kochaba was. Okay. So here we have. So the Rebbe is saying like this. Good morning. Okay, let's just go briefly through the Mamar, because we've already done 4 paragraphs. So briefly through the Mamar, there is a prophecy by Micha, prophet Micha, and he says, just like the days of going out of Egypt, God promises, I will show you miracles. And the Rebbe points out, why does it say like the days? Like the days. And this is really also the previous Rebbe also points this out. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, in a Mamar that he said in 1948. Mamar that he said in 1948. Why does it say like the days of going out of Egypt? We only left Egypt one day. One day they were out. In fact, that's the whole holiday of Passover. And in fact, there's a commandment that we have to remember that day. Why does it say your days? So the Rebbe said that we have to remember the day of going out of Egypt. That gives us power to go out of bad, to leave bad, to change ourselves, to realize that who we are is not the way we're supposed to be, and to try to do good, even though we have not yet embodied or experienced this good yet. The main thing is just to go away from bad, running from bad. But tremendously difficult thing to do, to leave bad. And that gives us power. That's what it says, the day that we left Egypt. The day that we left, we have to remember that day that we left Egypt. We went from bad. KiYmai, that what it says, the days that's going too good. There the emphasis also is leaving the past, but the past doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It could just be going from one level of good to a higher level of good. That's also going out of Egypt. It's also difficult. Says the Rebbe, that's the service that we have to do now. Every day. The days that we're going out of Egypt, that's all of the days. What do we made a calculation? 1,200,000 something days from the going out of Egypt until right now. Each one of those days was one of the days that we leave Egypt. One level above the other. If for no other reason, we get experience. So said the Rebbe, that what it means that we go out of all limitations to show you what it means to go from one level of good to a higher level of good. So the Rebbe explains the whole entire world was created by a means of what's called tzimtzum, that God contracted or concealed himself. And Chassidut explains that Kabbalah reveals that there are many, many levels of this tzimtzum and contraction. Many, many levels of this contraction, to the degree that there's what's called contraction and there's hiding. God sometimes hides himself, makes a veil. Sometimes it's like a window. Sometimes it's like a wall. Different types of contractions and concealments, etc. But generally speaking, we're just concerned that the fact is that God does conceal his reality to the point that the reality that we have now in this world is so distant from God's reality and that we have no idea, to the point that we think that even going to heaven, that's God. And it's not. Heaven is just a creation. It's just another level of creation, another sort of a window of God, a little bit of a clearer picture of what God is. So that's what it means going out of limitations, going out of even the limitations of heaven, going out of limitations of spiritual. That's what we're really accomplishing every day. It could be we don't even feel it, but that's what we're accomplishing. Okay, that essentially is what the Rebbe set up to now. And then he finished off by saying that if every day we're going to a higher, more refined level of, and as we've taken care of the so many levels, what is million levels, 1,200,000 levels of concealment and hiding, we've taken care of that already. Now we're in the last stages of exile. So this is like the highest. On one hand, yes, but on the other hand, now the darkness is even greater, just like the darkness is before the dawn. And we explained it for no other reason than, what are we talking about, this darkness? We're talking about our attitude, our feeling, where we're directed to. A person can say, hey, I've been trying this thing, and my forefathers, we've been believing this thing about going out of Egypt for thousands of years now, and it hasn't happened. Hey, enough already. That's what it means, darkness. We're giving up. And not only that, who are we? And compared to the previous generations, right? The previous generations had people like Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Maimonides, these giants, right? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Not to talk about King David, right? King David and all the other the people that came after them. That's only the second temple. What about the first temple? All the prophets that were there, Isaiah the prophet. These were tremendously high people. They tried to bring Moshiach and they didn't succeed. How are we going to do it? So that's what it means that darkness gets darker and darker. And not only that, God, as the generations get closer and closer to Mashiach, as surprisingly, we have less and less power to bring him, but we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Because we're standing on all of the work and the efforts of the previous generations, so therefore we have the ability to do things that they didn't do. Right? It's like an ant standing on the top and the head of a giant. So, but nevertheless, in our generation right now, we have some of the most difficult tests that are possible, and that's going to be the new service. The Rebbe is going to say, in order to get this new revelation, it's going to be in the future, we have to do a new type of a service, a new type of, because it all depends on what we do. What are we supposed to do? What are me and you? What are we actually supposed to do? These ideas are wonderful, nice ideas to explain, but what do we actually have to do right now? What do you have to do? That would in the future. That which in the future. There will be a Yitzia going out, from all limitations, from all obstructions, all concealment of God. Will be in everything. Everything you do. Waking in the morning, brushing your teeth, everything you do. That everything in the future, Erech will be incomparably more real than they are now. Rather whether in regard to the world. Then there's the prophecy by Isaiah. What does it say? That it says there'll be a new heavens and a new earth. Olam Chadash, a new world. What does it mean, new? We'll see the Creator in every detail of the creation. Torah, also regarding the Torah. That by means of this, the world was created. God says, God looked in the Torah and he created the world. Then in the future, just like the world, every stone, every atom will cry out, there's a Creator that's creating me. I'm a miracle. It'll point to the Creator. This Professor Viktor Frankl, he brings a difference between a man and an animal, let's say a dog. He says a dog, a man, if you point to something, the person will look in the direction that you're pointing. An animal, if you point to something, the animal looks at your hand, unless he was trained otherwise. He'll look at your hand. The same thing, the world is pointing to something. The world is pointing to the Creator. But we're like animals. We just look at the thing itself, right? We look at the finger that's pointing. We think that's all there is to it. So it is with the world, so it'll also be with the Torah. The Torah, also, every word, every letter of the Torah is pointing to the Creator. Every commandment. Level, then in the future, Torah Chadasha, just like the world will be brand new. So also we'll feel that the Torah is brand new. Just like we'll feel that the world is coming from God, we'll feel that the Torah is coming from God. It'll come out from me. It'll be new, fresh, alive. Also regarding to miracles. The revelation of God, the miracles that are going to be in the future, it'll be a new revelation of God, which is higher, incomparably than the revelation of God that's now, or even that was at Mount Sinai. The call of Giluim, because all the revelations, the Aksha that are now of God, and they come from what's this level called the Kabbalistic level, Chitzoniut Atik, the external crown of God. Well, the Atid Lavon in the future will be Penimiut Atik, the inner essence crown of God. Atik is usually like God's pleasure or something. So it'll be external pleasure of God. That's now, that's the highest, and the future will be the internal pleasure of God. The future redemption will be by means of avoda b'siyum zman hagalos. That's why the future redemption will be mainly by means of our service of God and especially our service now in the time of exile. Now we are demanded, it is required from us a new, higher type of service of God. Because everything in the future will be brand new. The revelations of God, which will be accompanying or following directly after Mashiach, will be brand new. Therefore, the service that by means of it are drawn down, all these things also has to be something new. What's new? Ha'inyan is the Bisman Abayat in the time of the temple. Shaya as that there was then. Kiloi Elokus revealed God. It says in Pirkei Avot, Eser Nisim Nasul Avotenu B'Beit Hamikdash. There were 10 miracles that were done in the temple every day. Those were just the ones that are listed, but there were more miracles. As for instance, in Yom Kippur, everyone would go, and the place with all the Jewish, the Kohen would come out, and he would say the name of God, and everybody would bow down. It says everyone was packed. They were packed, omdim safufim. They were packed one next to the other, and when he would say the name of God, everyone would bow down. They would stretch out their arms and their legs on the ground, and there would be room around each person, it says. How could it be? It was a miracle. Shenisim, that was one of them. Shenisim elu, that these miracles were seen by any bus, you could see it. Ad kamamim, some of them were near him, you could see. La'amya oretz, even to the normal, regular, uneducated people, just like the one I just told you. Avodah b'kiyum Torah mitzvahs, and doing Torah and commandments in the time of the temple, was al pitam badat, was logical. Everybody felt God is creating the world. Time of the Holy Temple. Everybody felt that we're the sons of God. And so they did the commandments. Why not? Even though then there was a commandment that you should love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and all of your might. All of your might means above understanding. Nevertheless, because everybody saw then, revealed godliness clearly. Even the self-sacrifice that they had then, it was limited. The Tam V'Dad, it had reasons to it. A person would serve God because he had reasons, logical reasons to serve God. There were a lot of people that didn't serve God. Listen, back then, in those days, in the time of the temple, there was no one that denied God. Even Yerovam ben Nevat, that the evil king of what's called of Israel, the upper kingdom, that he made everybody do idolatry, he believed in God. How he explained away worshiping the golden calf, he was a genius. He could explain it. He explained it. But somehow or other he could explain it. Okay, he explained it. Alder says similarly, B'Zaman HaGalot, in the time of exile, Kishalo Haya Iskabrus, and everyone always believed in God. Everybody put on tefillin, everybody kept Shabbat, they all kept the holidays, but they also worshipped idols. They also worshipped idols. How exactly they did it, I have no idea, but nevertheless they did it. This thing, okay. Alder says similarly, B'Zaman HaGalot, in the time of exile, Kishalo Haya Iskabrus Achoshech, when there wasn't so, now exile, when there wasn't so deep darkness like now, like for instance, after the second temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed, but we still had great men. There was still Rabbi Akiva, great tzaddikim. Masha'enkim, but there are the ikvas, the Mashiach, which is not the case now. B'kol yom, every day, there's deeper and deeper darkness. Nowadays, in this time, when they are last few hundred years, right? There's actually Jews that don't believe at all in God. There's whole movements of Judaism that they don't believe in God. Organized movements, they call themselves Jews. And they're proud that they're Jews. And they don't believe in God. Some of them call themselves rabbis. Darkness, that's what's called darkness. Yeshnam Kalam and Nisyonos, especially now, there are many, many what we call tests. Tests. God tests us. And especially the most difficult test is not to be embarrassed in front of those who scoff at you. When we call Shekhinah, much more so Shemaligim, that the scoffers are anashim pochasim v'reikim, empty people. This is very, very difficult to bear. Okay, the simple meaning of this was brought out. Come on, really. I mean, what does this mean? Let's understand this. And the Rebbe is really serious. The Rebbe is a very experienced person. He knows what's going on in the world. This doesn't seem to be according to experience at all. This doesn't, not logical. That's the biggest test that there is to doing Torah and the commandments, is people scoffing at you. Not what does it say? That's how the Shulchan Aruch begins. Don't be ashamed in front of those who scoff at you. So, he's putting out the right? Is that will take away your enthusiasm. It'll deter you from doing Torah and mitzvahs when they scoff at you. Really? Is that really so? I don't see how that is so. We have to understand, I think, what the Rebbe is saying. Okay, first of all, the one who brought this up, who made this into a major issue of not to scoff, not to be embarrassed from those who laugh and scoff at you. He made this into a major issue. This is a principle in Judaism. This is how the Shulchan Aruch starts off. Don't be ashamed when people scoff at you, because occasionally a person wants to be a little more serious about Judaism, and his friends say, "What are you, some big tzaddik? Who are you, Rabbi Akiva? What are you?" So people laugh. That's old-fashioned. Okay, it's a difficulty, but it's nowhere near a bigger difficulty as, God forbid, there's terrible tests that people go through. Sickness. People are sick. God forbid, it's the worst thing, isn't it? People have trouble. You'll see, you'll get married. You have children. You have trouble, God forbid, with your family. It's terrible. It's like having a tooth or something that's rotten that you can't pull, right? It hurts so much, and it's your own family that you love, and you don't want to pull it. What about financial problems? The financial problem is terrible. A person has big debts. He's being pursued by by the mafia because he owes them money, has to pay the interest or whatever it is. Taking away his car, those are big problems. Those are problems. The biggest problem is that people scoff at you. That's the big problem. So I want to say what I think. Okay, first of all, when the Rebbe, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, when he said this was said also in Russia. And then in Russia, there were a lot of Jews that really, truly opposed Judaism. They opposed God. Eventually this came into the communists, that they were the worst of all. And they were murderers. There was a whole Yevtsektia, a Jewish section of the Communist Party, that their whole thing was to kill Jews, to put Jews into prison, to get Jews. That was the thing. The Jewish sector, they were all Jews, and they were all Jews that had been religious Jews, and they left Judaism for something much better, communism. They were the ones that put the previous Rebbe into prison, and they were supposed to kill him, but there was some mix-up in the night. But that came from something before that. This Yevseksia came from something before that. It was called the Haskalah movement, the intellectual movement. And these were people like Moses Mendelssohn and these people, right? And their thing was that they openly scoffed and made fun of anyone who did Torah and commandments. And they pointed out, look at the tremendous achievements and progress that's being made in Germany and France with art, music, philosophy, science, discoveries, new ideas that are conquering the minds and hearts of mankind. And you Jewish people are still with this old Alte Sachen for 3,000 years ago. Stop it already. You see, it's not working. You're just suffering all the time, you Jews. And be handsome, be beautiful, be, flower, be colorful. Your Jews are living in a black and white life. And so they laughed. Any person that did Torah, commandments, they would scoff. And they would teach the youth to scoff at anyone who deviated from their new ideas. They're scoffers. And eventually, some of them were these scoffers were big Talmud Chachamim. There was, what's his name, Echad Ha'am, Asher Ginsburg. There were other people among them that there were geniuses, that they knew Torah commandments. And they completely left everything, and they scoffed at anyone who didn't do it. And this was a very big, a deterrent from a person to do Torah and the commandments. But still, it doesn't. I mean, this is the main thing. So there, it says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is like in the right in the end of the first temple. The second temple. I'm sorry, the second temple. The second temple was destroyed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was like the big rabbi. He was the big genius, and he did miracles. And as he was dying, his pupils asked him, "Please leave us last words of encouragement that we can to keep up the spirit. Now you're leaving us." And he said, "You should be ashamed of God like you're ashamed of people." And they said, "Are you serious? That's all?" And they said, "You should know that before a person does a sin, as he says, I hope nobody sees me." And he's doing a sin against God. He knows that God sees him, but nevertheless, he's more impressed and worried about what people think. So we don't really know how much we are affected by what others say about us, and to the degree that we even are affected by them, even if they don't say anything about us. We're just worried maybe they will say something. So therefore, even religious Judaism, you take off your beard because you don't want to be different. You don't wear a yarmulke outside. You don't want to be different. You don't have tzitzis. If you have them, you don't put them out because you don't want to be different. There's some people that say, according to Kabbalah, there's some Sephardic Jews, according to Kabbalah, you have to keep the tzitzis, and that's different. That's a totally different story. We're talking about the motivation is you don't want to be different. You don't want to stick out. You don't want to people. If it's dangerous, it's also different. But here we're talking about among Jews, even among Jews in Israel. Right, in Israel. I know people personally that they went out to India, to whatever it is, like all the Israelis. They went to India, to Thailand, to this. And when they were there, they met up with Chabad. They realized that they're Jews, and they started doing Torah and the commandments. When they came back to Israel with their friends said, "What happened to you? You got a beard? Your dog died or something? You're in mourning? What are you doing? What's wrong?" And they laughed at them. They said, "Let's have a good time. Let's go apart." "No, it's on Shabbos." You keep Shabbos. What? Okay, if that's the way you want to live your stupid life, then live it there. We're having a good time. And because of that, they became non-religious again. Now it's less common because there's more and more and more Jews now because of Chabad that are becoming religious. And because also the other groups are friendly, are becoming much more friendly. Okay, anyways. Here's my theory. If you're going to be embarrassed by people laughing at you, if that's the problem, so don't go among people. Here, look, there's all these other religious Jews that they just keep to themselves. They keep to themselves in their own place. And then nobody's going to laugh at you. Right? Nobody's going to laugh at you. Keep to yourself. Simple solution. Right? I'm going to tell you what's wrong about that solution. Number two, what does he say? If the people that scoff at you, you're affected by them, especially if they're people that are empty. Pochasim, Reikim, exactly the opposite. Someone scoffs at me, says, look at Rabbi Bolton, look at that beard. Look at him, he's got a beard, he's got this. What do I care? I care. The guy doesn't know anything. He knows nothing whatsoever. He doesn't know what Judaism is. He scoffs at me. It's like a dog barking at me. I should care. So how is it that if a person that's empty, those people especially have an effect on me? I can understand it if it was in the time of the Rebbe Rashab, right? When those people were violently against Judaism, and you see a person like that, it's very, very difficult. It's a difficult thing. They say that the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, he had a famous debate with missionaries. And then, of course, the church was tremendously powerful, and they wanted, of course, just like today, but then it was more, open. Now they're trying to do it with deception, but then it was open that they were against Jews. They wanted all the Jews to convert. So the king, whatever it was, he made a debate between Moses ben Nachman and missionaries. And I think there were also, the main one was an apostate. The person, he had been a Jew and he left Judaism. And the person that he was against was a big genius. And in general, the priests were geniuses then. They knew the whole Torah. They knew everything. And he had to debate them. Of course, Rabbi Moses ben Nachman Ramban, he knew all of the answers. He was like they say, the last of the Kabbalists, the true Kabbalists. He was a genius and a holy person and everything. And so he had all the answers and he gave all, and it's printed, all the answers. And they said that shortly thereafter, it was so difficult for him to see people speaking so negatively about the Torah in such a certain way, and people that were basically, as far as Torah and God goes, total idiots. They had their idolatry in their mind. They worshiped this person, and therefore they twisted around the Torah and made all sorts of stupid interpretations in the Torah that just hurt the soul to hear. And he had to sit and listen to them and answer them why it wasn't so. Right? So this is a very painful thing to see people that are empty when they scoff at the Torah. It's very, very difficult. A very difficult thing. Okay, but that's Moses ben Nachman. He was a tremendously sensitive person. I'm going to tell you my theory. My theory. Okay, the first thing about just going and locking yourself into your room, that certainly is an answer, a solution to the problem, not to be embarrassed by people who scoff at you. Keep away from the scoffers. Keep away from them, right? Okay, here the Rebbe, though, is saying the opposite. We now are in the generation that we have to go out and try to convince every Jew, even those people who scoff at you, that they should wake up and be Jews. We have to go out. We're attacking them. We can't lock ourselves away in our houses. That's the opposite of what the Rebbe wants us to do. Maybe other groups can do it, but Chabad not. We have to go out actively and try to influence every single Jew however we can. Not necessarily by arguing and convincing, asking them to put on tefillin, talking them about doing another commandment, right? Sitting and saying, let's learn Torah together. And anything, telling them a nice word of Torah, telling them a saying of one of the Rebbes, in a pleasant way, and not in a confrontational way. Our weapon is light. How do you say, education, to educate. Nowadays, education is not with a stick. What happens when you meet a person that's totally empty and he's scoffing at you? Now it's really difficult because the reason you are approaching these people is from love. These people are Jews. These people are holy, whether they realize it or not. And now that he's scoffing at you, now you have two things to do. First of all, you have to look for the good inside of him. It's really difficult. And also, you have to be not affected by the fact that he's scoffing and saying, I don't want anything to do with you. So Zek kosher lisbol. This is very difficult to bear. I have to be with this person. I have to try to be a good influence on this person. He's angering me. Nevertheless, this is the last generation that in our generation, we have to do a totally new type of work. We have to not hold our own anymore. The job of us is not to survive. Our job is to convince all the Jewish people, like the Rebbe said in the Sikha, remember the evil son, the Ben Russia, that he's the star of the whole evening of Passover. We have to, because the whole order of the Passover evening is for the future redemption, when all of the Jewish people will come back to their senses. But to make it happen is very difficult, especially when they're scoffing at you, especially when they're empty. This that we are able to stand in these tests, who are voted the Mesiras Nefesh. This is what's called self-sacrifice. You have to leave all of your old self and just do what's right because it's right. This is the service of God in the heels of the Mashiach. In our generation that we're in now, where we are right now in the end of the time of exile. And this is the service that we do now, to actually go out into the streets and try to put the tefillin on another Jew, to try to convince another Jew in a friendly, positive way, to be a good example to a Jew that wants to have nothing to do with it. That's the whole. This is a very difficult type of service, and you can see it's working. I mean, like I go out, let's say every Friday, at least, and I stand in the street, put the tefillin on people, and you just be amazed in the Chassam is Israel, but they do it all over the place in America, and you'd be amazed now that the replies of people. First of all, there's so many of them. Almost everybody smiles, even the people that don't want to. And a lot of people smile and they say, no, I already put on tefillin today. People you would never dream that they did, with all sorts of tattoos and earrings in their noses and now the service that we have to do is incomparable. That has to be a totally new service. That what we served God in the previous generation, it was a little bit sort of logical. Revealed powers. And the service now, in the end of the time of exile, is what's called self-sacrifice. That comes from the inside of the soul. Here we can see now, just very simply, what's going on in Israel, right? What's going on? They allow the reform to come in, and the reform people, they openly say that they don't believe in the commandments, to various degrees. And that they let missionaries all over the place. It's just really incredible, right? And these things are normal. These are normal. They have these crazy, decadent parades that they make with twisted, sick people. The LGBT, it's a sick movement of people that are sick. It's sick, and now it's acceptable in the world. What are you talking about, sick? That's you're the one that's sick. You're paranoid, and you're a bigot, and you're a this and a that, right? Abnormal has become normal, right? The Arabs have as much a right to the land of Israel as the Jews do, right? That's what they even arm them. They allow them to do whatever, right? Incredible. They allow them to bomb us and to this. The whole situation is, and the law in Israel is that a Jew is anyone that converts, no matter how. Even if your father is a Jew, you're a Jew. That's against God. That's against the Torah, and that's normal. That's 100% normal. And if you say otherwise, you could be in big problems, right? You big problems if you say something against it, right? So it says the Rebbe, that's darkness. There's no darkness like that. What's now abnormal is considered to be normal, and what's normal and good, a Jew does Torah and commandments. That's called ridiculous, right? So that's what you might think. But now the fact of the matter is that if you just have a little bit of self-sacrifice and a lot of love and positiveness, and you realize how good God is, and forget about how bad those people are, and just don't think about it whatsoever, then all of a sudden you realize that it's just a thin veneer of bad. And it could be the little scoff and whatever, and a normal person would react to that scoffing. But to maintain a positive attitude, by means of always being positive, always coming from the essence of the soul, always thinking I'm a Jew and I'm God's representative here to do good, by means of doing that, by service, especially in the service of the end of the exile, that the service then is the pnimis hashama, has come from the inside of your soul. You have to not get angry and not have any lust and not have any depression, and not only this, even though the world is very, very maddening and very depressing and very luring and very tempting, nevertheless, you have to come from the essence of your soul. Who am I? I'm a Jew. A Jew is connected with God. I have to do what God wants. And what does God want? That every Jew in the world has to know. I have to do what I can to inspire others to also reveal the essence of their soul. By means of this, we can draw down God's essence. Into what's called the pnimius of God's atik, the inner aspect of God's pleasure. There will be a brand new Torah. We'll feel the godliness in every word of the Torah will cry out to us. Every letter of the Torah will cry out to us that it's God speaking. That will be drawn down, God, in it, minote in the Torah. It'll be drawn down into the Torah from the giver of the Torah, Bofen Chadash, in a new way. And we can say that this will be done also by means of the service at the end of exile. The kasher avoda, when the service is in a way of self-sacrifice. Azai, then the learning of Torah will be lishma. Then we'll learn the Torah, and it'll be purely for the sake of the creator of the universe. We'll feel the creator of the universe in the Torah. By means of this, there will be also a new world in the creation. Because the Torah is the blueprint for the world. God looked in the Torah and he's creating the world right now. when we feel the godliness in the Torah, then there'll be a new heavens and a new earth. It'll be an exciting, beautiful, holy, dynamic, happy world every instant. The Yeratzon may be God's will. She calls it that all this will be B'Korov Mamash soon. By means of our deeds and our service. Akshav now, Nelich B'Korov Mamash, we will go soon. The Kabul Pnei Mashiach, to receive the face of the Mashiach Tzidkenu. Sha'az, then Yekuyim B'Poel will be fulfilled. What the prophet Micha said, just like the days when we left Egypt with big miracles. God will show us big miracles. It all depends on our service and attitude to make vessels for these miracles. Miyad Nigolim, immediately there will be the future redemption. Immediately. Terrifying. Okay. Now I'm the next class is going to be given later. I have to go somewhere. So it will not be immediately. We'll see. I'll have to make it later. But meanwhile, if you look in the classes in the YouTube, in our YouTube account, you'll see that last night I made a class and I finished a complete mimer, a short mimer that talks about how the future redemption depends on the meal that we make on the seventh day of Passover. Look over there, you'll see it's 40 minutes long, something like that. You'll enjoy it. And God willing, I'll make the class in Likuti Sichas. I'll have to do that later. Have a good day with Mashiach now. God bless you. You know what? Let's just do the Yom Yom, because I don't know when we're going to have the Yom. Yom Yom Chabad. Let's just do the Yom Yom. On a person's birthday, today is the Rebbe's birthday, by the way. Today is the Rebbe's birthday. On a person's birthday, he should spend some time alone. Recall his experiences, think deeply into them, his previous, what he did in his previous up to now, in his life up to now, and then correct, repent, correct the bad deeds that have to be corrected, and make decisions that the future will be better. This is the Rebbe in 1902. He was born to his parents. May all of them raise up with the coming of the Mashiach. Okay, have a good day with Mashiach now. The Rebbe's birthday. Happy birthday, Rebbe. We want Mashiach now. Yechi Adonenu, Moreno Rabbeinu, Melech HaMashiach L'Olam Va'ed. Like I say, the Sichas class will do it later. So look at our site and YouTube and be ready. At 3 o'clock, God willing, there will be a class, and we'll finish the Haggadah of Passover like we started yesterday.